Hello, and welcome to the Character Quick Guide series, where I explain a character's kit really briefly and give an overview of how to build them and how to play them. This is not supposed to be a comprehensive guide covering every aspect, but just a quick way of introducing the character. And I figured that the first guide I should release should be Amber, which is everyone's first character. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Amber, as most of you watching the video probably know, is a 4-star Pyro Bow on field DPS. She has two main playstyles, which is Melt and Burgeon. And in Melt, there is the Charge Attack playstyle and the Bear Buddy playstyle. I'll explain all of this much later. And also, this PowerPoint that I'm using will explain more than I am speaking, so feel free to pause if I'm going too fast and read what is on each slide. So in the kit, so her kit, her skill summons Bear Bunny, which who taunts enemies and explodes after a certain duration of time, or when it is destroyed by enemies. And holding the skill can allow you to aim where to place Bear Bunny. And her burst shoots a field of pyro arrows that does a short but sustained amount of pyro damage. And some of her constellations does affect her gameplay. I'm going to skim over her C1, but C2 basically allows you to do an early detonation of Bear Bunny by shooting its legs, and it will cause a much more powerful explosion, dealing much more damage. And C4 reduces the cooldown of Bear Bunny and also adds additional charge, so you can have two Bear Bunnies right off the bat. And I'm going to get into how to build her for Melt. So her Melt charge attack playstyle is focused on, well, as the name implies, melting her charge attacks. And it is the most common playstyle for Amber, and it works at C0. And for talent priorities, you would obviously focus on your normal attacks, and you don't need to focus on your skill and burst. The weapons you could use is the best in slot is Lidney's signature, the first great magic, and I have listed some other stat sticks you can use, and as well as just good 5-star weapons to have. And if you don't have 5-star weapons, that is completely fine. There are a lot of more free-to-play friendly options such as Slingshot, Hamayumi, Prototype Crescent, and Song of Stillness. Uh, However, if you do have her C2 and C4, another rival playstyle is trying to melt the Baron Bunny damage, which will do a more consolidated burst of pyre damage. Um, and in this playstyle, you will want to plop down Baron Bunny whenever you can, and then when the enemy are gathered around it and their effective is cryo, you detonate Baron Bunny. In this playstyle, you only want to use your charge attacks on the enemies when they have cryo, because if you accidentally apply them with pyro, it can be annoying to get the cryo off of them. And of course, the talent priorities, you want to focus mainly on skill because that's your Baron Bunny damage, and then normal attacks, and you don't really have to worry about your burst. And for this, the weapons choices are still largely the same. The first Great Magic and Polar Star are both great options, best in slots for this Baron Bunny playstyle, but Prototype Crescent, Ibis Piercer, and Song of Stillness are still free-to-play friendly options. And for both melt builds, the artifacts are the artifacts are largely the same. The best in slot, the artifacts you should really be going for is Shimenawa and Wanderer. And you can also go for Crimson Witch of Flames or Desert Pavilion if you have good pieces there, although I do not recommend farming them for Amber. If you don't have any of them, you could run a temporary 2-piece EM attack, Crimson Witch, or Makishose Hunter. The the main stats you want to go for your Sand Circlet and Goblet is EM, Crit, and Pyro, respectively. Although if you have enough EM, you can also consider Attack, Crit, Pyro. And for substats, you want to focus mainly on crit and then EM and then attack. And if you do plan to use your alt every rotation, you also want somewhere around 120 ER. As for our teams, For a melt team, it is quite obvious that you are going to need at least one cryo teammate, and that is really the crux of it. And the cryo teammate can be Rosaria or Ganyu, who will provide good cryo application that can keep up with Amber, and or you can have Diona and Layla, who provides some cryo, like less cryo, but also the utility of shields, because in her charge attack aiming mode, it is easy to stagger her. And I also provided some other flex options to fill in the other slots in your team, such as Zhongli, Bennett, Kazuha, and Sucrose. You can read closely on the slide for what they do, how they contribute to the team. Next up, it is the Burgeon build, and it is, in my opinion, easier to build, although a bit harder to play. You do not shoot at the enemies with this build. You have your characters uh, apply Dendro and Hydro from off-field, causing Bloom, and then you shoot at the seeds, not the enemies. Because if you shoot at the enemies, it may cause burning, and burning causes less Bloom, which is bad. Um, and for this, talents, the nice thing about Burgeon is that you don't have to worry about talents, just need to focus on leveling her to 90, which is very important. And the weapons is also very free-to-play friendly. You have the Stringless, and or you can use the Windbloom Ode, or the King Squire, or even the Raven Bow, which is also has less EM, but it's very accessible, and the build is also very simple. 4-piece of Flower Paradise Lost, or 4-piece Go to Dreams, or 2-piece EM. And as you can see, you just focus on maximizing EM, 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 EM. Just focus on EM, nothing else really matters. Just level her to 90 and build EM. And as for her teams, you will need one Dendro, one Hydro, and one Flex spot. And for the Hydro characters, you really want a good AoE Hydro applicator, so someone like Kokomi, Ayato, or maybe even Barbara, although her AoE is a bit smaller. As for Dendro characters, at really any of the usual Dendro applicators will do. Nahida is of course the best in this spot, but also Kale, Dendro Traveler, Yao Yao, and well, I will get into Kirara later, but they will all work in as a Dendro applicator. And then for the flex spot, you want someone who can provide the shield, such as Zhongli or Kirara, uh, or someone that's able to freeze enemies with cryo. Um, so a cryo character like the aforementioned ones from the melt builds, uh, and or some combination of both. So someone like Diona and Layla who can provide cryo and shields. And those are the main options I recommend. Although um, characters that provide a boost in EM, such as Sucrose or Hazel, could also fit on that flex spot. And that is all. I promised a quick guide, so there is that. And honestly, I highly recommend you go to Catching Mains if you want to learn more about how to play Amber and how to precisely build her. This is a really brief overview and just a way to give a sense of how she is kind of like and what kind of playstyle she fit into. And in fact, yeah, and I highly recommend Catching Mains as a place to look for more Amber information, as most of the Amber guides elsewhere is usually pretty outdated. And with that, have a good day, and I'll be working on creating more of these quick guides.